In this video, we're going to use simple colors, one shade, or just black and white and gray, to depict and work with vanishing points, a single point perspective, to create the illusion in a two-dimensional artwork of distance or depth. Let's set this back the way it was to the beginning, and we'll start from a blank screen. To begin, we'll use the line drawing tool to draw a horizontal line in the top third of our image. It's not critical that we make it go all the way to the edge. We're not going to fill this one in with any color. We're just going to simply draw some single point perspective and some different elements in that perspective. First thing I'd like to add is a road. We'll continue with our line drawing tool, and we'll decide that our vanishing point is somewhere here in the middle. So I'll draw a line down to the bottom on one side and on the other side somewhat equally, and I'll click line drawing tool, make a thinner line to either side to outline where my white lines are going to be. So that'll be white lines, and I'll draw in or pour in my black paint for the road. Then I can go with a box rectangle drawing tool and just simply draw some rectangles. If I have the solid fill on, I can draw rectangles to cut off my lines. And I think I'll use the graduated steps that seem to be produced when I created those lines to define where my rectangle will go. And I'll switch to paintbrush or pencil, maybe zoom in a little. So what I want you to notice is that on this drawing of ours, that everything goes to the vanishing point. In other words, each line and even the width of the center line that would go down the road, that goes to the vanishing point. Now I suppose I could, if I wanted to, use the pencil or line drawing tool with white and put in a few more white squares, some dots up here, just to finish or create some lines. Good enough. Okay, let's move back out to normal view. In vanishing point, that's what was what is flat on the ground. We also can depict things like railroad tracks, and we're going to use the same point for those. I'll use the same line drawing tool. I'll pull out with black, though. Might make it thicker for my railroad track itself. There we go. And I'll put my railroad track right beside my road, and that's too thick. So I'll start with the thinnest. My goal for this exercise is not to make too many details. So even though it's true we want this railroad track to have a diminished or a tapered thickness, I'm not sure that we can easily pull that off. So one of the techniques I suppose I can do is to just build it up as it's left, and then draw another one, because railroad tracks don't usually come single. So put another track right beside it and make that the smallest size as we did before, and then after I flatten it, add a thickness to it, then add another right beside that to build it up as it approaches the foreground. So that's a railroad track, screwed as they are. Also want to create our railroad ties, and we'll continue with the monochromatic black. We'll use black on black. The railroad ties themselves have to sit and be perfectly horizontal in single point perspective. So all of our railroad ties will follow this pattern. Another truth about drawing this is that the ends of the railroad ties really can be predicted. If I were to put my first one in there, and this line, Control Z, I will make a gray line, and the gray line will symbolize in this exercise as just a guideline to define where the edges are. So there's one and there's the other. And then back to my black color, my rectangle, and now I can define, or I know where the edges are, so I'll click right on that and build in my railroad ties. I think I'll space this out a little bit more before I go to the next. I think you get the picture. As they go away, if I were to jump up here, I would follow the same. The only thing I haven't done is calculated what the linear, or what the differing thickness of these railroad ties ought to be. So I'm just using my best perception to do that. So I've put those through to the distance. I also want to add something that has vertical elements, in other words, a fence. So I'm going to build a fence beside the railroad track right here. This will be my first fence post. And as before, this fence post has a vanishing point, or shares the same vanishing point as it goes over the horizon. So there's one end, and if I click down here, there's the bottom. So this represents the top and bottom of my fence. So if I have boards on my fence, you can see that they would all get narrow as they go away. But for our fence, I think we'll make our boards vertical. So back to the rectangle, and I'll put another board here, or a pole rather, and the spacing for these should diminish at the same rate as we go off in the distance. And I'm trying to keep that space wide so that I find I don't have to do a lot of work at the upper end. Although in this particular type of image, we could argue that the number of railroad ties, fence posts, would be infinity as we approach that point. However, fortunately for us, the pixels limitation on this drawing package keeps that from being an issue. I'm going to stop there and go back and add, well, we'll call them slats to our fence. And for that we'll use a dark gray. I suppose we could outline that dark gray for a rectangle, and these are the slats for our fence, and they will all start from the same. Now I've drawn this so it's rectangular, but that's not true. The slats for our fence really should have this upper angle, and the only tool that can do that for us at this time is the polygon tool. So if I click right on this, draw my first line, then draw my vertical line, and I should take care to make sure it really is vertical. I'll make the same width, I trust, and then I'll double click at my original point. So now I have my slat. And I believe that object, if I expand it a little, can I? Do I have control? There we go. I believe I can move that up here, and I'm just going to keep it here for the moment because I believe I can copy and paste that, which keeps me from having to redraw that. Let me use the regular select tool. Keep me from having to redraw that element. So Control C and Control V. I'll set up so I have transparent selection of white. Control Z, Control V. Now I can put the slats of my board on my fence. And it looks like when I've changed the width, I've changed the pitch. Oh well, I'm not worried. So we'll get it close. Let's make our board taller than our fence. There. And I'll right click, copy, right click and paste. One of the characteristics of Paint though is that everything will show up in the upper corner. So now I'll paste my boards in place, and I'll just bring them a little bit smaller every time. And now I'll switch to Control V to paste, drag a new board, and I think you get the picture. I can create a fence by following the rules of single point perspective and create a fence and a railroad and a highway following these rules. So these are vertical, these are horizontal. Now had this been a two-point perspective, having a point over here and here, then these lines and the horizontal lines, all the horizontal lines would have followed those rules, differing rules. And we'll look at that in another another exercise. Let's move to the other side of our drawing and draw some images of buildings, because that's actually just as fun. If I wanted to draw some buildings on the side of the road here, this would be the front of the building, the base, and I'll draw the top of the front. We'll just put that line ending it right there, and then the back of the building. Hopefully you can see by the way I'm placing these lines that I've kind of created some structure. And if let's say I have a street behind it that I want to continue doing the same thing, I can. And you don't have to do the one behind. I just do it as an example. Okay, so we'll leave those there, and it looks like I need to adjust this to make it true, because I do want to have the same vanishing point. When I say point, I mean literally the point, not in the general area, but a point. Now, using a rectangle with a gray fill, I'll draw my first rectangle, and I do want it to touch. So each of these corners will touch the lines that are here. So there's one side of my building. But I've learned from experience I should do the far side of my building first. So I'll place it here. And then I can now draw this side. There we are. And I'm ready to draw the front. So this side actually will be gone altogether, but it helps mark my points. If I do the front face, I'll use the polygon tool again, and we'll keep this same color. I'll draw my first line from this corner to this corner, letting go of the mouse. Then I'll click the points of intersection for the rest of this face, and double click at the beginning, which will close the polygon tool. So now I have that section, that segment. When I do the roof line, I have the same issue, and let's use a triangle tool, mostly because I want it to be pretty consistent. I want it to be linear, so I'll put that there. Control C, Control V. Well, apparently I didn't copy it yet. Control Z, get rid of it. We'll just draw another one here then. Triangle tool. So my first triangle went above the line, therefore my second triangle goes above the line about the same distance. And now I can draw a roof. So I'll choose a different background color, maybe a light gray, and a polygon tool again to draw this. Draw my first line. I'll draw my first line with a little bit of an overhang for my roof, a little bit beyond the point. I'll bring it down beyond the edge, bring it back a little bit below the edge, double click the top, and I should have my roof line, one side. Now the other side, I suppose, is going to be not visible by definition of what we defined. There we are. So I have my other side kind of in place. I think this line, so my other side, by definition, because the other line is hidden, can't be seen, but it still follows the same rules. There we are. So the roof lines, everything on this plane, all these lines go to the vanishing point, even these roof lines. Had I wanted to be more precise, I could have drawn out. In fact, let's do that. Let's make that a gray line, and we'll draw from the vanishing point down my roof line, and hopefully it's right on. I did it by eye at first, and they should be right on. Okay, so there's a building, and we can continue to add other buildings, both in the foreground and the background, as we go on. So this is the end of our vanishing point, single point perspective video. Good luck.